Hello, and it's Maria McMahon again with you. Welcome back to this video, which is red flag number 37. And that is all about the narcissist will give you the silent treatment or stonewalling or ghosting. Now, these tactics hurt just as much as the verbal abuse that you might be regularly subjected to. And the silent treatment is basically just that. The narcissist refuses to engage with you, and you might as well be invisible. Now, this is an extremely hurtful kind of treatment because it makes you feel so totally invalidated and worthless. And you're pleased to be heard, to apologize, to explain, to rationalize, to make up. All fall on deaf ears that deliberately do not want to hear anything you have to say. And ignoring this is just another form of punishment. And when this happens, you feel isolated, lonely, and depressed. And I've talked to many people who said it's one of the most brutal things that's ever happened to them, to experience that complete invalidation of themselves as people by being on the tail end of this awful silent treatment. So what's also really important to know is that silent treatment like this actually has negative effects on your brain. Studies have shown that the anterior cingulate cortex in your brain is responsible for detecting different levels of pain, and the silent treatment activates this zone. So not only that, it also affects your autoimmune system because of the stress it causes. And I'm going to go into talk a little bit more about health shortly, but I just wanted you to make a note of this here. The silent treatment is damaging to you emotionally and physically, and we've got proof for your brain, that shows it. Now, let me talk about stonewalling. Stonewalling, this is when your partner withdraws from a conversation or discussion and refuses to consider your concerns. Now, they might ignore you, change the subject, and give you vague or dismissive responses or derogatory, invalidating responses that simply do nothing to address the subject you're trying to discuss with them. Now, this tactic also invalidates and isolates you, but it makes you more desperate for attention. And effectively, that's putting the narcissist in more control over your emotions. Now, stonewalling also often devolves into gaslighting or other forms of devaluing to emotionally unseat you and to get you to keep giving the narcissist fuel. They want to see that you're suffering and they want to hear you beg. And the silent treatment will often follow because the narcissist wants to prove his or her power by denying you any access to, any conversation at all. And this is, of course, denying you basic rights and respect as a human being. I mean, who the hell treats people like this? Just ask yourself that. Who does this? Narcissists do, because they want to belittle, demean, control, and make you feel insignificant and invisible. And that builds them up. And isn't that sad when you think about it? So how do you avoid the trap? The most important thing that you need to know, and I always say this again and again and again to people, the first thing you need to know is it's not you who's at fault. You've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing but behave in a normal fashion, and you do not deserve this abhorrent treatment. If you're being subjected to these tactics, reframe the context of what's going on here and consider what's really going on and what this behavior is. Now, when you're getting this silent treatment, think of it as a time to have a little peace, to think for yourself. And this is particularly important if you've been longer term in this relationship and you're constantly being battered emotionally. Use the time to actually sit in silence and reflect what's going on here and ask yourself, is this how I want to go on with the rest of my life? Do I want to be living like this for the rest of my life? So please, the next time you get the silent treatment, welcome the silence and take a nice deep breath and look out the window. Find something nice to look at off in the distance and think about that. Ask yourself, do I really want to be living my life like this? Or is it time for me to do something about it and start living a life for myself? So you could get something good out of the silent treatment next time it happens to you. And I want you to think about that. Now, another thing that you can do is just to get a pen and a paper and have 2 simple columns. And I talk a lot with my clients, with people I work with, people in my groups about pros and cons. Really simple way of sorting out any problem in your mind is to get the pen and paper, 2 columns, pros and cons. And you write down the pros and cons of being in this relationship. Now, this is an excellent way of seeing what's really going on without the rose-tinted spectacles. But you have to be really honest and see how quickly the cons column fills up. And keep your journal somewhere safe and hidden and go back to it every chance you get and add more information to these columns. And again, you don't have to be years into a relationship to do this. You could be dating someone for just a couple of months and all this behavior could be going on and you are in a real confused place. You just don't know, one minute you're madly in love, this person's amazing, the next you don't know your arse from your elbow, as we say in the UK. So you don't need to be a long time in a relationship. If these types of things are going on and you're feeling this type of confusion, then you need to do this exercise. You need to start getting some clarity, okay? So fill up the cons column and it will fill up a lot quicker. Now, as I said, keep the journal hidden, work with it only yourself and go back to it every chance you get and add more information. Now, when you're in an abusive relationship, what happens is you tend to overlook or conveniently forget, any abusive times, any negative times, bad times, especially in the early days. And particularly when your partner bounces back with the love bomb crumbs to keep you hooked. And this is actually known as intermittent reinforcement. And it's a well-known psychological tactic to keep you bonded. So having everything written down in black and white that's going on can really help you to see the reality that you're getting into or that you're living with. And it can give you the courage to start planning your exit strategy, regardless of how long you've been in the relationship. Now, ghosting, this takes the silent treatment and stonewalling to a whole different level. And this is where the narcissist simply vanishes out of your life with no explanation. Now, this can happen at any stage of a relationship, and it can leave you reeling with unanswered questions. And the depth and level of confusion you'll feel will depend on how much time you've spent getting to know this person or think you've got to know this person, or how deep you are into the relationship. It could be that you've been chatting on a dating site, for a few weeks, excuse me, or even months, and everything seemed to be going great, but suddenly they disappear, gone. Or maybe you were friends on Facebook, but one day you log in and go to Messenger and they're nowhere to be found, and you search the name and nothing comes up, and they've ghosted you. but for no reason that you can fathom. And you'll never find out unless one day they decide to engage again. And if they do, they'll have some elaborate sob story to make you believe they had no choice at the time. And they'll give you a whole lot of other BS that you'd be very wise not to believe. Now, when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, and you could be married to them, they still might vanish for days or for weeks or even for good. And you might remember that earlier in an earlier video, I mentioned that they might have their own home that you never get to see. And this is often the reason why. So they have a bolt hole to run to if they feel like they need it, or, you know, they have to, or whatever. You know, they keep these homes to escape to. And why they do it really depends. If you're their primary source of fuel and they live with you most of the time, they may be using their bolt hole to entertain or seduce secondary sources of fuel. And these could often be one-night stands or short flings that they engage in. Happens all the time. Now, they also ghost you as a means of punishing you or worrying you and stressing you out even more. And the ghosting can extend to other forms of contact. They might physically disappear, but then you won't be able to reach them by phone. And bear in mind, narcissists often, once you start to get to know what's going on and you start digging, you'll discover they often have more than one phone. And they won't respond to the text messages or calls to the phone number that you normally use for them. They'll be using another phone. Now, you'll be pacing up and down, worrying yourself sick, and your anxiety will be off the charts. Meanwhile, they'll be at home with their new supply, or they'll be out looking for it. And wherever they are, they won't be worrying about how you're feeling. Now, they may disappear because they found a more exciting new supply of fuel, and they may leave for good, and you'll find yourself completely discarded. Now, if and when they do return, and this could be weeks, it could be months or even years after the disappearing act, they can swan in and behave as if nothing out of the ordinary has happened. And why are you making such a fuss? And again, they'll twist it around and make you feel guilty and stupid for acting up about it. If it's a recent return, you'll be so relieved. And I know this because, again, I've had people tell me, I'm like, why didn't you say where the hell? Oh, no, I was so relieved that she was back. I was so happy to see her. Or while he was back, I was so overjoyed. I thought, oh my God, he's back. He wants me. He loves me. Rationality goes out the window. And this is what happens. So you let it drop. And then it happens again. And you let it drop again. And over time, you won't even notice how much of yourself and your basic human rights you've given up to this person. You'll have managed to basically downgrade your expectations to the point where you're willing to accept whatever pathetic excuse they come up with. Their annihilation of your personality continues, and you continue to allow it because you don't understand the level of manipulation. You don't understand that you're being systematically brainwashed and traumatized. And it's really important that you know about this so that you never let it happen to you again. Now, if they turn up after years, they might, on the other side, instead of not making a big deal out of it, they might have some outrageous explanation as to why, as in, you know, why they went, as in one example I heard about. And this is when a guy told his female partner, you told me to leave and not to come back until I was ready to commit. Well, here I am. This is like, this was from a guy who discarded a woman and turned up out of the blue 7 years later. 7 years. Another showed up 20 years later with another woman I know with exactly the same love bombing, lines, songs, the lot, with the excuse that the breakup was just a misunderstanding. And despite the complete absurdity and lack of logic with these excuses, both these women in this case took these guys back. So you need to keep in mind that even if you have gone no contact and you've blocked them and completely forgotten about them effectively, they might still find a way back to you. So don't let that catch you unawares if it happens. If they do show up again, block them. Believe me, they will not have changed. So keep your defenses up and remember that unless you've done the really deep healing work, you could still be vulnerable. You could still be sucked back in, hoovered back in just like that. Even when you think you've done the work and you think you're safe. And again, I have heard that from the mouths of people that it's happened to. People who said they didn't believe for 1 minute they would ever go back with this person. And yet they did. So how to avoid that trap? You know, when it comes to silent stonewalling treatment like this, ghosting, similar kind of advice. Get your journal out, add this latest metaphorical punch in the gut to the diabolical treatment you've already allowed yourself to put up with, and really see what's going on in your relationship and wake up to the fact that this is not how people should be treating you. Realize that you're better than this. You deserve respect and happiness. And if they have ghosted you, great. Get to work on completely sealing up the exit strategy so that they can't come back into your life. If they do come swanning back in, acting as if nothing has happened, what you can do is decide to act the same way. Don't ask where they've been. Don't say you were worried, upset, or you missed them, any of that. This will confuse them because they'll be expecting a big show from you. Don't give them any satisfaction by providing that kind of fuel to them. Remember the grey rock technique? Use it here. And I'm saying to do this in a situation where, let's say, for example, you're married, you are not in a position to get divorced, whatever, and your husband or your wife have disappeared and ghosted you, and then suddenly they come back. They're going to be expecting all kinds of drama and excitement. Don't give it to them. Don't give it to them. Just act as if they were there 5 minutes ago. I know, hard to do, but grey rock. If you've learned grey rock, then this will stand you in good stead. But if you are in any way capable of getting out, plan your exit strategy. You do not want to be involved with this person. And focus on that exit plan. And if they've come back and you are still working on your plan, keep working on it. Don't let them know anything about it. Don't give them any idea that you're planning to leave. Because if you do and they feel threatened, you know, that you're beginning to see through them, they'll redouble their efforts with love bombing. Or they'll go the opposite end and they'll start putting their smear campaign into place. And either way, you know, you don't want to be involved with this because you don't want them hitting you up with a smear campaign, which they might do anyway, but that's the subject of another video. But just don't give them a head start. Carry on working on your exit strategy and get them out of your life. Okay, so coming up next, I have got red flag number 38 is going to be next, and I'm going to talk about triangulation. So if you don't know what that is, or you do and you want to know a bit more about it, then come and join me for the next video that will be coming up. I think it's on this side it shows up, I don't know, one or the other sides. Come and join me for that, and thank you for joining me today, and it's always good to have you here. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you very much. Bye for now.